Hey y'all, this is Lisa Atkins on Agile Uprising.
Oh, this is going to be a good one. Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Agile Uprising podcast. I once again am your host, Jay Hrcsko. Joined with me is James Gifford.
I'm not wearing my toque anymore, eh?
Chris Murman.
What is wrong with Gifford?
Colleen, who had to step off for a second. Colleen, you still there?
I am here. Hello, everyone.
Hello. And fellow coalition members, John Schneider.
Howdy.
Who is on now on his second episode. Same thing as Mike Caddell, other coalition member.
Howdy, everybody.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. So the topic of this episode is very important considering the world we're currently living in. We're going to talk about remote coaching. So we're all aware of the coronavirus, a.k.a. the Kung flu, a.k.a. the Wu Ping cough, call it what you want. Now everybody is working remotely. Even our contractors are working remotely. Our coaches who are not full-time are all working remotely. Everybody's at home. So how do you actually become an efficient and effective coach? How do you still make those connections, maintain those connections, and get some result when you're not even remotely close to the people you're going to be coaching? So that's the topic we're going to unpack this evening. So the first thing we're going to talk about, and I'm going to start with you, Murman. How do you keep people engaged and maintain a connection with the people you're supposed to be coaching, being as you're not even remotely close to them? How do you keep that thread there?
So we're going to touch on many hot buttons that I've already seen come across Twitter in the last few days. It's for those of you that haven't been on Agile Twitter, it's just a shit show right now. I joked yesterday that I can't wait to read everybody's blogs about remote working, and sure enough, everybody was like, "Here's 7 tips on how to, work remotely," kind of a thing, as if we have any idea how to do what we're doing right now. Like, can we all just admit? And I don't know if this is not answering your question, even in the slightest bit, but I never answer your questions, Jay.
Hey, you're just like my wife. Keep going.
I know. She's better looking than me. So what I will say is we are in an unprecedented territory. I don't even know how to address that. We are in unprecedented territory. You can say that, oh, I've run a stand-up remotely once, or I've done a retro. Like, I've even written on Colleen Johnson's blog about doing a remote retro. Like, I've had to do it. We've never done this before. Anybody that's like, I know exactly how to do this, is out of their goddamn minds. Because we are in territory that we've never, ever, ever encountered before. And I think that the sooner we come to admitting that, we're going to start to actually come to real solutions. Can we at least start with that agreement? Like, we don't know what we're talking about. We're just guessing at best right now, right?
I think that's fair. What
Chris,
do you think? Would you agree,
Chris,
John?
I think Chris's response is like the people that went out and bought up all the damn toilet paper at Costco.
Which I don't understand. It's the flu. It's not dysentery. But whatever. John, I'm going to ask you. Would you agree with Murman that we are in truly uncharted waters here?
Yeah, I mean, when you go to companies, and forget remote, right? When you're going physically there, everything's unique to that company, right? So yes, you have a approach, a style, and a guide of how to get the right outcomes that you want and start your work and make magic happen and all that. To Merman's point, like, we don't even have the playbook to even start sometimes. Like, how do you get the right people in the right forum and do it virtually? How do you have this chat? Like, some people don't even have video, and 90% of the people that use WebEx don't even use video. Like, there's a culture movement that still has to occur before you even get to the baseline of actually even talking about these things. So yeah, you're talking about, we have a stand-up. It's like, great. Like, one person had their video on and it was grainy, and they're like, come on guys, let's be real here. So I 100% agree.
What do you think, Gifford? Have we truly crossed the Rubicon here?
Yeah. So this is totally unique. And my whole big fear for the future is people remaining productive. You've taken a group of people that are used to doing 9 to 5 in the office. They have a routine. They have to get up. They have to, come to the office. They have to wear clothes. They have to put pants on. No Donald ducking it all day.
Is that all that
long.
makes you productive? You just need pants?
But
I'm doing something wrong.
there are the life routines that literally drive you and kind of keep you in a rhythm that keep you productive at work. You're going to now take, a company of, we're at 1,000 people in our R&D organization, and you've thrown them at home. And, 600 of those people are in Bangalore, India. And if you've ever been there, the infrastructure is not 100% there in place to keep people productive, connected throughout a day. So, one of the things that we have done, though, is pretty much we have a culture of video. So if you're remote, you're on a WebEx, whether you're in the room or not, you're on a video, that we have that at least going for us. So trying to figure out how to keep employees engaged while they're at home with their 9-year-old running around, asking them about the schoolwork that their teacher is mandating them to basically keep going. This is ludicrous. So companies, have to be at some level ready to lose productivity. But so between the people going home to work, people having kids running around, never potentially working remote in their life, it is an unprecedented thing. And that's why I was busting Chris's chops about the toilet paper.
It's such a good point. I mean, in our house, we've got me and my husband both trying to work from home. So we've been doing like coffee in the morning to see which one of us has like each hour, which meeting can you not have a kid in your lap for? And I'll be like, well, I have to facilitate this. You have to take him. And he's like, well, I have to be on this call. And I'm like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, you get him that call. I'll take him at 10. You take him at 11. And we're just like jockeying all day around who's going to have a screaming kid in the background for a call. And
100%.
It's been the norm the last couple of days.
So everybody, that's my whole point was like, we know what it's like to have like us consultants that spend Fridays remote at home. We know what it's like to do a few meetings remote or a few stand-ups or whatever, and giving some guidance remote. Like, we get all that. But my wife is in the other room. We've never worked in the same house before. Also, we're lucky.
Your newer wife, right? Like, it's recent, right?
This is wife 2.0.
She still has that new wife smell. Is what I'm trying to get to.
She
yeah.
does,
Okay.
She smells amazing, and I love her.
She's not mad at you yet, is what you mean.
Yeah, she's not mad. Yeah, we have not gotten pissed at each other yet. I will say though that it's a quiet house this week because it's just the two of us. But next week, our kids that are at their other parents for spring break, they come back home. Dallas canceled school indefinitely, right, because of the virus. We're going to be like, we will have small, not like a 3-year-old. We are going to have 10-year-olds walking around going, Mom, Dad, I need this. Hey, can I have a snack? Yo, I know that it's my third cookie, but I want another one. And I'm like, hey, I'm trying to tell Fortune 50 companies how to strategize their transformation. Can you shut the fuck up? Right? No, we can't. I can't say that to that child, right? Like, what are we supposed to do?
You could, but the child will end up like me.
I spent 2 hours sitting on a trampoline today while doing emails so my kid could go outside.
Yeah, that's unprecedented. Mike, all right, Mike, you've been very patient. What do you think about all this mess?
+1 to everything y'all said, a few thoughts to add to it. There's, on top of all that, there's the human emotion. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt about our world. Things are not the way they have been, and that compounds the stress. So some other things that occurred to me is what I'm talking with my current client about is we need to think and that things are going to slow down. Things are not going to move at the pace we're accustomed to. So if it's good to keep that in mind and be patient with your colleague, because they've got a whole potentially toxic brew of stuff they're dealing with. Best case is they're wondering, what's going to happen to my 401k. That's the best case. So understanding things are going to slow down, be a little patient, show a little more empathy, and just breathe, chill. We'll get through this together, and Yeah, just we like you said, Chris, we've done this in bits and pieces. Now we're gonna have to string it together for a longer duration. And that's where I think some of the tension and things are going to get tested a little, and it'll be an interesting journey.
So I'm going to start with you, Colleen. So one of the things that everybody's touched on the fact that we're going to lose a little bit of productivity, right? How do you see yourself? I mean, we're 1 week into what may arguably be weeks and months of this. God help me. How do you avoid the perception of being a seagull coach, in the sense that you fly in, you make a lot of noise, you shit on everything, and you leave? Like, how do you prevent that perception when you're used to, like John said, you do the Gamble walk and you walk around, and that might have been the last episode. Too many beers, everything's blurring together. How do you maintain that connection without feeling like you're swooping in and swooping out?
I'd love to say it's Slack and that we can do this like just with chatting and sharing Giphies, and it's just not working, right? We've actually set up a couple new stand-ups and touch bases. We talked today about having a Google Hangouts channel that's just open all the time. So if you're not in a meeting and you want to drop in and talk to people, you could do that. We talked about having a couple virtual happy hours where there's no agenda, right? I think that's the other thing, is like when we get everybody now on Zoom, it feels like we have to crank this thing out in the next hour. And like Mike was saying, everybody's got a lot of emotional stress right now too, that we're just, I feel like, kind of not acknowledging. And then we're like, okay, be as productive, like you guys are saying, like you guys have done this here and there in pockets. You know how to do this for the next 1 to 3 months, right? Go. And I think that we're not acknowledging the fact that there's a lot of other stuff we're not saying, and
Yes.
how everybody's feeling and all this burden that we're carrying. And so one of the clients I have here in Colorado right now was really great and thoughtful about saying, everybody, all the deadlines we have, all the things that everybody feels this urgency around, like, just stop. Everybody just stop, take a deep breath. Like, none of that actually matters right now. Like, we'll get there when we get there. And
That's
keep
amazing.
doing what you can do. It was so amazing.
That's a powerful statement to make too. Very powerful.
Yeah.
Because nobody's doing it right now. I mean, what you said was so beautiful, Colleen, because we aren't giving people a chance to. But I've spent 2 days where every time my phone rings, it's from another coach or an internal transformation team member or a leader or a dev manager or something. And the first thing I do is, how are you? And we never get to the topic that they wanted to talk to me about, because nobody's acknowledging, like that's amazing, Colleen, that you have a client that's willing to say, because my client right now, to be fair, there's a lot of things that, like, there was a lot of promises that have been made to like end customers, to government, to legal authorities, to people that pay the bills, or maybe it's just an internal stakeholder. We've made promises. And you know what those people are going to say? Well, my head's on the block if that doesn't get delivered. I don't care that there's a pandemic around the world. Get my shit delivered.
And I think the other part of that, though, is
nobody's
things are
admitting
changing.
it.
Yeah, but where we are today, like, we could be on a nationwide lockdown in 3 days, right? Or maybe we're all back at work in a week. We don't know what's going to happen. So I think giving everybody some flexibility and grace right now is really important, and not being like, you have a deadline of Friday, so you should still crank these things out and hit your sprint goals and all this stuff, because there's just so much unknown that I want, like, I hope everybody can pause and acknowledge that we don't know where we're going to be in a week, and it could be far worse. So we'll give ourselves that flexibility to say things could be harder, and we need to be able to reset.
I want to go to John, but I think, Chris, you made a really brilliant point. And I noticed my boss did it on a meeting or two today, where everybody gets on and the first question is, how is everybody doing? Which seems like a very benign statement, but you're right. It takes a lot of the tension out of the room, especially if you have someone who's willing to say, hey, you know what? My dad's in Washington State and I'm a little bit stressed out right now. I mean, that totally resets your entire MO of dealing with that person and other people in the room, because you realize that there is some outside stress coming in on this conversation, which may take it in a direction that you don't really want it to go.
Yeah, we're just not used to. We're not. Again, we act like we're experts in this sense, and I'm sure at some point in time in this conversation, we're going to talk about things that can be done. And I've got lots of ideas of things that can be done. I just don't know that they're going to do any good right now. And I think that there's a lot of, what I've seen on Twitter is there's people that, because of our work, we've traveled all over the country. We've moved all over the country. I don't know how close you are, like proximity wise, to your families and to your parents. I'm a few hours away from my folks. Like I'm in touch with my parents every day. I don't call my parents every day. I mean, not that I hate my parents. I've got a good relationship with them, but I don't call my parents every day. I'm calling my parents every day. Hey, guess what? Hey, do you have a cough? How's everything going? How are you feeling? Did you all get out of the alley? When our kids are with their other parents, I say, did you get out of the house today? Or did you just play Fortnite for 7 hours, right? Like, and legit, that's a legit conversation, right? And are we getting out of the house? Like, it's so easy. As much as some people are like not introverts, like maybe we need to leave the fucking house and go for a walk around the neighborhood and see things and look at neighbors and go, "We're still alive. You alive? You good?" Kind of
back to the. There's an unseen burden with all of this that we're not acknowledging, right?
I know.
Right,
the kids on meetings.
Real
But I think, I put my big kids to bed the other night, and they were both in tears, right? I thought they would be ecstatic to hear that school was canceled for 3 weeks. And one of them asked if their baby brother was going to die, and the other one asked if their grandparents were going to die. And, there's a heaviness to everything we're doing, which makes it hard to hop on Zoom and be like, I think one of the tools I keep saying is like, start with a fun opener, right? Like, what movie have you been watching, or what have you been doing to pass the time? What have you been doing to get outside? And I'm like, I don't give a shit right now. Like,
you're right.
I cried on my spin bike for an hour last night because it was the only time I've been alone and finally got a chance to process and freaked the fuck out. So that's been my source of relief right now.
Yeah. And before we move off this topic, because I definitely want to get John and Mike's take on this. So I was chatting with Melissa Boggs yesterday. Everybody knows her over at Scrum Alliance. And she said something really tremendous, which is, how privileged are we that we're complaining about, I worked 8 hours or 9 hours or 10 hours, and I was on video calls and I had to work from home. Dear God, I didn't have to spend money on gas or tolls or whatever. I can have food delivered. We live in the richest country in human history. We can have everything delivered that we want to us. And if we can't, restaurants will just put it in a box and give it to us. They said that I saw a stat on CNN earlier that said that the unemployment rate could rise to 20%, that we could lose 1 million jobs in the month of April, right? How lucky are we that we get to do this? And the biggest pain in the ass that I have is I have to get on a Zoom and look at people's face while I'm in my sweat. Boo.
Well,
fucking who?
At least you can turn the video. We had to actually turn our video off because it was eating too much bandwidth. And as far as getting food delivered in a typical moment of gluttony, I had a egg sandwich delivered from the local convenience store 2 weeks ago, and the wife has pestered me incessantly about how gluttonous it is. And then when they announced that all these places were doing takeout only, I looked at her and I said, "Ha, the shoe is on the other foot now, huh? You want sausage or bacon on your sandwich?" Let's go to John. John, what are your thoughts?
So not to repeat a lot of the other stuff that obviously agree with a lot of it, but I personally would want to bring up the 4 personality traits, right? Are you a driver? Are you expressive? Are you amiable? Or are you analytical? And all those leaderships have those traits of which one. Sometimes you're 2 of them, but usually you're one of those, right? And to be honest and be very blunt, like those driver and analytical people need to take a freaking back seat and get a wake-up call and be more amiable and expressive to these people, because that's what they need. So usually it's, as transformational coaches, we're very self-aware. Like if you're working with somebody who's a driver, you got to work with that, know their language, know how to work with them. I think leaders need to be really self-aware that you need to be more amiable. And if you're a driver, that's a really hard mind shift change right now for them. But hey, you get paid the big bucks, you're a leader. Like you got to understand you got to be empathetic and know what these people are going through. So that's what I would say is, be amiable, be expressive, bring people along. But I mean, you still said it though, Chris, like they do got to drive. I mean, we got to get results, because if we don't have results, I mean, maybe we do have layoffs. Maybe the company does suffer more if you're too amiable and expressive. So this is where the leader has to have that tough balance, right? So,
what are your thoughts, Mike?
Avoiding or minimizing seagull coach perception.
Yeah.
First one, don't inadvertently crap all over people. Be careful with words and tone. I cringe at sometimes when I hear myself slip, and other coaches I've heard start talking to somebody and they come off preachy. We shouldn't be doing that anyway, but this is a time to really pay attention to our tone and our words, because everything is magnified by the emotion. Another thing that I've found works for me, I've done about 2 years of mostly remote coaching, is offer and follow up on staying engaged and connected with your coachee and their topics. If you follow the classic arc of a coaching conversation, you get commitment to an action, and then just offer, hey, could you how do you feel about letting me know how that works out? Just that simple act can sometimes cement the fact that you care. You're not just there to give an answer. One of the things that just irks me to no end is when I observe somebody who's not really listening. They're just waiting for the other person to stop talking so that they can then give the answer. So it's even more important when we're remote and with the situation we're dealing with, to truly listen. And when you do that, people get it. People know when you're listening, and it makes a huge impact on them. And one of my hot buttons, use email as a last resort. I hate email. So don't write an email.
I had an old boss. I know it doesn't say to me, why call when you can, why write when you can call, why call when you can stop by? And his point was that closer level of communication, voice is always preferable to written word, because written word is, very easy based upon your bias or your mindset at the time to totally misconstrue it. I want to move us along, and Gifford, I'm going to start with you. So what would be your number one suggestion, your number one hint to people who are coaching remotely for the first time? What would be the first thing you want to say to them, to say, based upon my experience, here's my suggestion to you, here's my hint?
I struggle with this because I've always had, generally, before I ever did remote coaching, I was always a face-to-face kind of individual, having the pulse on the team. You're there every day. And, over the course of time, through listening to, Agile for Humans and, Ryan Ripley's interview with Troy McGinnis kind of opened my eyes to, data-driven approaches. So having ways to monitor the system, to basically to spot problems, treat it like a set of gauges in your car. When the temperature sensor's going up, shit, we better pull the car over, something's going wrong, we better, it's overheating. So, when I launched into remote coaching, I had a full set of Troy's coaching dashboard. You can go to Focus Objectives and check that out. I've added on some retrospective feedback, so scaling retros. Before Colleen launched her awesome product, we were scaling retros long before that. But, having that tooling in place is amazing and makes quick work of it. So a lot of times I use a lot of data to spot problems in an organization. I was at an organization where it was 2 coaches to roughly 80 teams, and we monitored the entire enterprise based on data and looked for hotspots, looked for enterprise trends, and then devised programs to then stay in contact with it. Now we're on with the conditions today, we are on the extreme fringe case of that. But I run an entire 1,000-person R&D organization and transformation from pretty much anywhere in the world, using this data to then kind of direct people or have conversations with different people about, hey, here's some things that could be going wrong in the system. based on these parameters in the data that we're seeing. Are you seeing that? And I don't frame it with here's what the data says. I use some more powerful leading kind of questions to get to the heart of what I'm seeing and potentially interpreting. So having safe metrics that are not weaponized at your company is foundational to being able to coach remotely.
Was that the pun again? You used the safe pun again.
No, I am not. Every time I say safe,
I
I am not referencing Dean Leffingwell and scale as a framework.
Can I just point out that that those of you that have known Giff a while and have been listening to him, especially on this podcast for years, like this is a far cry from the Scramando that walked around with his projector and his Post-it notes on his belt with camel pants. Like our boy is fucking grown up.
Hey,
like all using numbers and like data driven behavioral, like what?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, at the end of the day, we're all terrible people. We're all terrible people.
That Post-it note belt rides along everywhere I go. I had to make a special one that I leave in a box that I leave in the hotel in India, that it's just there in country when I go there. But no, I still wear the Post-it note belt. If you guys want it, we'll put a link to some pictures of it.
Awful.
Yes,
that's awful. You get paid real money to be in charge of people, and you still look like a child.
God bless them.
Person organization, and I have no problem wearing a utility belt that has a projector on it.
Never sober.
But I mean, it's getting slightly off the topic, right? We talk a lot about vulnerability, right? We talk a lot about honesty and grace, and I'll give James credit, right? This is one of the things he does better than most coaches is he's willing to go out on a limb and do something which could be construed as a little goofy, but that makes people easier. People can probably approach Gifford maybe easier than some others because he's goofy and grinning, and it's a shtick.
But that's most of our shtick. Like we all have a character that we play, especially in front of clients or teams or whatever, and that's fine. Like again, none of this is to put down that. Here's the problem: is that James is filled with better than average ideas. It just comes from a broken vessel. That I just can't see that because all I see is camel pants with fucking Post-it notes, like zip tied to his belt.
And on next week's episode, the Agile Uprising board goes to group therapy. Moving along, so I want to go to you, to Mike, because I know you and I were chatting earlier this morning about some of the ideas you've had around remote coaching. What are some of the hints you would give to people? What's some stuff that's worked for you?
Probably my number one tip: use video. And followed closely behind that is to be patient. Use email as a last resort, and most importantly, remember we're all human beings and we all deserve respect and consideration, and we're all in this together. And it's real easy to get lost in the pixels you see on the screen and forget that there's a human being behind that. And just be yourself. Unless you're a real jerk, then don't be yourself.
or maybe that works. How about you, John? So if you had to give our listeners one of your best tips, tricks, hints for being a successful remote coach, what would you say?
Little bit on Gifford's side. It's like when you're physically there and you see the team and you see what's happening, like you can respond, right? It's almost like if you work in like infrastructure operations or whatnot, and you're looking at a graph of CPU usage and you just see that thing going, you can just watch it and say like, okay, I know when I need to take action. It's high, it's low, and you step in. But when you're remote, right, you can't just watch it. So you have to take a step back and say, what are all the things that I used to be able to see day to day, whether it was the people, how they work, the meetings, and then realize I need something now that triggers something, whether it's data or a meeting or insight, something. So you almost have to take a step back and go through, here's my day-to-day and what I do when I coach. And if I can't be with the team or observe or watch what they do, how do I get data so I can get an alert or do something? So it kind of goes back to that data-driven model. But that's kind of my advice, is take a step back and realize all those things where you could just swoop in or watch the team talking on the side or any of those things. It's not there. So you got to take a step back and realize, well, how is your team operating now, and how do I get insights to be a more effective coach?
And use video. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Same question to you, Colleen. So what would be one of your, with your experience, the hints that you would give someone to say, hey, here's one of the things I keep in mind when I remote coach?
I would say in normal life, I think one of the things that's super helpful is to have a quick visual of what the goal is and why you're all together. I think when you get on video, it can be really quick. You can get like all the rabbit holes, and then you're like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And you totally forget why you're all on the phone together. So we've started just like for a lot of the calls where I've been remote coaching this week of, it can be a Google Doc or a Word doc. We're just like, what is the goal at the end of this hour? What are we trying to do together in this hour? So that when we start getting down chasing squirrels, we can be like, this isn't serving this purpose. Let's come back to this. So that's been super helpful. I think under these particular circumstances, one of the things we've been doing that I really like is asking at the beginning of the meeting, instead of doing like what movies are you watching? How's everybody feeling? Kind of check in. We've been asking if this meeting still makes sense. So is this a good use of this hour? And
that's brilliant.
if you have
That is brilliant.
If you have a baby screaming, can you still be productive for the next hour? But it's been really helpful, I think, to say like, is everybody in the right mental space to still have this conversation, or do we need to do this later? And giving everybody
Are you
the grace and
stabbing him? Are you sticking him with something?
I will say this is very apropos considering
You want sunscreen.
we started the conversation talking about life getting in the way. So it's very apropos that Colleen is example of life getting in the way.
I don't even know what's
Gifford's
wrong.
probably snorted sunscreen, so he can give you tips.
I mean, so
that provides immunity, the coronavirus. I don't know if you know that, but SPF, who knows? But I think that it's nice to be able to feel comfortable being like, I can't do this right now. Right?
Yep.
You guys are watching me struggle with the baby, and I think it is important to give everybody the opportunity, and it doesn't have to be kid related. It has to be also like, I don't have the mental capacity right now. Like, I just had a shitty meeting, or I just had a hard conversation with my spouse, or my, Chris, you were talking about talking to your parents. Like, I yelled at my mom for 20 minutes over FaceTime today about going to dinner parties and going hiking, and then hopped on a call immediately afterwards. And I was like, I want to choke my parents. Seriously. Everybody was like, are you okay? And I was like, I'm not okay. But I think that's the other thing of like, give everybody a chance to bow out. You're not going to have a productive conversation if everybody's head is somewhere else.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
We're not going to have full days. We're just not going to have full days of productivity.
Yeah,
well, we're not. I mean, so one of the things we randomly did was we sent my team. I sent my team out a printable kit and where they could get tongue depressors, so they could make funky signs to put up during our video chat meetings.
Yep.
So instead of raising your hand, everybody vote. Everybody just holds up the the check box, the thumbs down. We created some shenanigans to keep things light. Video is super important, but we have basically all the freaking emojis. We have a set of emojis that we use during meetings on tongue depressors.
Of course you do.
You hold up. But it keeps things light. Like we're trying to keep things light. I have we use WebEx, so I have a perpetual personal room running every day from roughly 6 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night, because I got to span India and Pacific time. And if anybody on my team from across the globe needs to join in, I'm monitoring it. I try not to do it sitting on the toilet, but we're monitoring.
You've totally done that. You've totally done that, you jerk.
Geez.
You've done that.
You
Don't
want to talk?
lie.
You want to talk about crossing the Rubicon? So, Murman, I have another question. I'm going to start with you. We typically use the term anti-pattern, which really just translates to dumb shit you shouldn't do. So when it comes to remote coaching, Give me something that you've either caught yourself doing or something you'd observed that you think people should be aware of to say, am I doing this? I shouldn't be doing this.
It's like you knew what to tee me up with. I have 17 things, but I'm going to keep it concise. First off, when Mike I love that Mike actually answers the questions that were asked. Most of the rest of us are like, we'll just answer whatever fucking question we want. So God bless you, Mike. But Mike was talking about seagull coaching. He's like, oh, when you're like, we shouldn't do remote seagull coaching. We do seagull coaching in person, right? Like our industry is filled full of in-person seagullers just flying in, swooping over. And I've done it. I'm not making fun of, I'm making fun of myself here. So everybody needs to take a real hard look in the mirror and be like, no, we shouldn't be overcoaching. No, you're already overcoaching. You're doing it now. You need to take a deep breath and go, I need to do 5 less things, right? We don't ever take our own advice. We go, you should control your whip. You should, focus on what's most important. No, we want to do 17 things. And we think, oh, no, because I don't create decks, then I'm an agilist. Like, no, you do the exact same things as the people you're coaching do, right? So, sorry, I'm just doing a stand-up routine now. I didn't mean to do that. So, first off, stop. Take a step back and quit doing 5 things that you're doing right now because you're doing way too much. You need to really focus on. You can't be close with 250 people in the organization. Like that's the way Dunbar's number works for a reason, right? Like who are the 10 people you need to focus on today? Write on a sticky note that's on the corner of your monitor and say, I'm not going to close the day out until I close the coaching loop that Mike was talking about earlier. I'm going to close the loop with those 10 people. And then I'm going to make another list of 10 people. And instead of going back to the same 10 people over again, I'm going to do new 10 people, right? So we're doing too much. Also, we need to quit preaching because, again, as I said at the very beginning, we don't know what we're doing. I was on a call earlier this morning where they're like, so we need some guidance for remote PI planning, right? From a SAFE perspective. Well, SAFE has a 2.5-day agenda for teams that are co-located, but they're in several locations, but they're going to do PI planning. And they go, well, we'll just do a modified version of that and it'll totally work. And I said, what on God's green earth will make you think that'll work? And they said, well, but it works. It works now. And I said, yeah, it works when people are in the same room looking at each other. There's nothing that is a plan that is in place. SAI hasn't come out with it. They've come out with some very high level things. And for the record, Scrum Alliance, Scrum.org, every major framework has come out and said, here are some things that we want to do. You're making it up. You don't know how to get 100 people that don't look at that are in, it doesn't matter whether they're across the street or another country. They don't know how to get everybody in a WebEx and plan for the next 3 months. There's nothing that needs to be done. So quit preaching that you know what you're talking about. Just say, I don't know. Can we try? Can we try? Making it big, make it small, right? Take whatever you're doing, take whatever plan, just like you're saying, doing less, right? Instead of focus on less people, focus on less initiatives. Also, take everything you're doing, bring it down smaller because you're trying to do everything too big because you want to be the hand wavy thing. Also, Excel needs to die a huge, giant goddamn death during this remote thing because nobody wants to look at your stupid spreadsheet.
What were you saying about not being too preachy?
Yeah, well, I'm preaching right now, but I'm on my soapbox, and that's different. It's different because I say it's different, Colleen, and shake your tone, right?
Somebody knock Chris off his soapbox for the love of Jesus.
Jesus, I'm sorry.
So Chris said something very interesting about the list of 10 people, and this is going to give you some inside baseball to the Gifford's works of sociopathism that he kind of follows. But I do keep a CRM on pretty much everybody in the enterprise that I've ever. I have 1,000 people that I have to worry about. So I honestly do have a CRM.
You're so important.
We lick my balls. We have we keep team dossiers on every team. Basically, it's a profile, team skills, what's going on, what was the last thing the coaches worked on. But I keep it for individual interactions. I literally, like, so when I go to Bangalore, I know I'm going to engage with, specific teams, leaders, things like that. I do keep basically Zoho CRM updated with literally people's information so that I can have a tailored personal one-on-one conversation with them. Like, hey, here's the last things I talked about. Hey, you told me a story about your kid. I check in on the kid. I check on the thing. Like, this is what salespeople do. This is how they manage their network of stuff. So as a group of coaches, I'm not saying that you need to be a sociopath like I am, but it does help to keep notes on interactions, people's things, events, so that you can follow up to give people that personal service that they come to expect and you use to build relationships.
That sounds like a lot of work, but it's actually you're honest, Gifford, and it's brilliant in the sense that it's the way salesmen work, right? Like, you can't remember everything about everybody, right? And if you need to write one of those things down to help yourself get through it, it just makes sense.
Your hairdresser writes down everything you tell her.
That's offensive.
Why she
That's
can
offensive that you'd use that
your
term
drama.
in my presence.
Yeah, there are two
I can hire
bald
her,
people. There are
Colleen.
two bald
Yeah,
people
thank
on
you
this
very much.
call, Colleen. It's not really, you're not going to resonate with Murman or Mike.
Jay, you need to look at yourself in the mirror there, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, I leave my barber alone. He's a savior for what he does with my horrible head. John, I want to go to you. So what type of anti-patterns do you see? What would you tell people? Hey, if you see yourself doing this, please stop.
Yeah, not to repeat too much of the other stuff, but honestly, a lot of the managers, once again, panic and fear, so they feel like I got to lead, and they jump in, and it's like, now I have to hop into like every session and anything that's going on to see if the remote piece is working. So once again, it's not Siegel manage, it's Siegel, and then they literally just keep shitting. They just don't leave. So literally, they just keep doing it over and over again. And there are coaches that are doing that where instead of just the stand up and leaving the team wants to do like a side huddle. They're like, oh, I'll join. And they're just inserting themselves into everything remote. And the team honestly just gets like uncomfortable, like leave them alone. So that's honestly the easy advice I give is, once again, give them time to breathe, organize. We have teams actually that are even adjusting their hours drastically. Like, yeah, be available 9 to 5, but some of the teams are like, we're going to start our day at noon and go till 8. Are you cool with that? And we're like, can you hit your sprint goal? Yes. Well, then who cares, right? But they're still figuring that out too. So I think that's the biggest advice I give. Give them time to breathe, room, and don't just Siegel manage, and don't just Siegel and keep shitting too. So,
Mike, what are your thoughts?
Common anti-pattern I've sadly done a few times and seen is people try to kind of lift and shift facilitation from in-person to remote. So you don't change the way you facilitate, don't put proper care for how the dynamics of a remote session unfold. So to successfully run any kind of session remotely takes some different techniques. Another thing that I've been guilty of at times and work really hard to avoid is doing back-to-back meetings. I working with a new client the last month or two, and people kind of scratch their head a little funny when they get meeting requests from me because they start at 5 minutes after the hour. And I said, dude, I looked at your calendar, man, you're back-to-back. I'm giving you time to get up and go to the bathroom and get a cup of coffee because, we've got important stuff to talk about, and I want you to be there, and I want to be there. And
it's just as important at home, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something I think that we think that you only need in the office, but when you're tethered to Zoom or WebEx for 8 hours with no bathroom break or lunch break, it's just as hard sitting in a chair at home.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work with a person
poop on computer.
I used to work with a person who would half kiddingly, half seriously joke about, well, it's 8 o'clock, time to insert the catheter.
It's terrible.
The last thing that this kind of transcends remote coaching, but we're supposed to be coaches, not fixers. I want to come to a place and help people find better ways within themselves with, kind of being a jungle guide, not telling them how to fix things.
That's an interesting statement, by the way, because because we don't know whether it's going to be a week, a month. So like coaches are in this awkward spot of, do I just fix it and then get over it? Or should I actually be coaching and being that servant leader so they can get through it themselves? Like, because it's such a short period, or it could not be.
Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste. I was talking with the CTO of my new client this evening, and shared this thought. We have the opportunity to help make this organization more resilient as a result of what we're experiencing right now. So, holy shnikes, what an opportunity! Let's not blow it. So those are my thoughts.
How many companies had a disaster recovery plan and said, rethinking
Never
that?
tested it.
We don't have the bandwidth. If you're not tier 1, log out. So we've been at this for quite a bit, and I want to be conscious of everybody's time. So I just want to do real quick final thoughts. I'm going to go around the horn. I'm going to start with you, Gifford. So just final thoughts on this topic: remote coaching. Any parting words, gifts of advice?
Ooh, don't be a sociopath. It's okay to take conference calls while you're pooping. Just kidding. No, I mean, in all practicality,
Always a professional. Just straight professional.
Wear your camo pants. No, I mean, look, all of this stuff is weird. I mean, we literally just went through our planning event, completely remote. And we learned some things. And so we're going to basically take all the learnings that we did from this remote, planning session, fully remote, roughly 500 people that went through this remote planning event. We're going to take some feedback. We're going to figure out what worked, what didn't work, how we managed it across the globe. And we may be inspecting and adapting our process around planning going forward, depending on how long this lasts. We're contingently looking at, could be a couple months, could be forever. So we're trying to figure out our strategies around that. And we're essentially running a modified SafePI globally. So, we're times are different, and you need to have, everybody seems to gravitate around our data. And if you want to hear my thoughts on that, there's the podcast 5 metrics to, I don't even remember the title of the talk at this point, but we have an episode where from one of my talks, if you want to listen to that metrics talk and get some insights into what we use for remote coaching and data, I'd be more than happy to sit down and have a conversation with you. But in all honesty, teams metrics are not to be weaponized. You got to be able to be flexible and inspect and adapt in this environment. And so you got to have an open mind. Let's just kind of look through this, time and figure it out. But I'm out of gas.
Back-to-back episodes will do that to you. I want to swing over to John. John, final thoughts?
Don't Siegel manage, be empathetic, and everybody's learning something new. So it takes time, be flexible. And once again, everybody said it, right? Be respectful to just people right now. That's the focus, and get over that hump. Then let's coach. So,
Colleen, final thoughts?
Well, I've got a baby falling asleep on me. It's finally peaceful. I think that final thoughts for me are, make it really clear why you're there, right? So that everybody is on the same page about what your goals are. And it doesn't have to be fancy. We don't need PowerPoint decks. It can be a Word doc that says, here's the goal. And you share that and say, are we on the same page about what the outcomes that we're driving toward in the next hour are? And then give everybody an out. Give everybody the opportunity to say, I can't do this right now, especially right now, because we're all carrying a lot of baggage and burden, and give everybody an opportunity to say, I'm not in the right space, especially when you have that visual, right, of saying, like, here's where we're trying to go, to be able to look at that and say, I cannot do that right now, right? It's the combination, I think, of the two that are really empowering, and I think give everybody the flexibility of bowing out if they need to.
Perfect. Bowing out with grace and humility. Mike,
Plus one to what Colleen's last point there. That well said. Use video. Remember, we're all human beings here, and breathe. Be patient. We'll all get through this together, and stay agile. This is a time to prove the value of being agilist. Inspect, adapt, and keep the end goal in mind. And we will make good stuff come out of the adverse circumstances we're all facing. I'm sure of it.
And take us on home, Mr. Murman. Final thoughts.
Oh, what a rare treat. So to echo something Giff said earlier, as much as I love making fun of him, he's full of some nuggets. Just be available. I think that right now, what I equate Seagull coaching is to coaches seeking things, like ways to, hey, I need to find a way to feel productive, so I'm going to seek things, seek conversation, seek whatever. I think the best thing right now that we can do is just be available to let the best conversations I had today were from people that I said, look, let me know if you need me. And people said, in the afternoon, hey, I've finally got a window in my day. Can I just catch up? And they know that there's nothing that I need from them. There's nothing that they need from me, that I'm not asking anything specific, that I'm just here to help them feel as best as they can. I'm like, well, tell me. Another thing is something that we used when I was at ThoughtWorks was something called a stand down. Because at the end of the day, we just say, what did you all learn today? And even if it's not at the end of the day, if it's at noon or 3 p.m. or 10 p.m., whatever, what did you all learn today, right? Instead of saying, tell me where we are with my stuff that I need, asking people, what did you all learn today? It's a great way to decompress. And instead of saying, here's what I need to do, instead of doing things, we just need to be things, and being available and asking people, what did you get out of this? It's really the best way that I think that we can be effective now. And also stay off Twitter, because it's just going to make you angry right now.
We've uncovered something there. I'm not pulling on that thread. So we are quickly really at the end of our time. I think we could probably go on for another hour. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Mike and John for joining us again. I want to thank Colleen, Chris, and James for taking time out of their evening. And echo
our guest squawker. This is Everett Samuelson screaming in my microphone.
And thank Everett.
Full credit.
Who finally calmed down with 3 minutes ago in the recording. I do want to remind all of our listeners that, like everyone has said, this is something new. This is something foreign to everyone, and we all need the support structure. Please join us on the coalition site. Join us in Discord. Find Murman on Twitter. I had a joke Twitter. I'm not gonna go that way. Find us and
it's super easy. Troll me.
Reach out to all of us and let's have this conversation. Let's all of us help get through it together, and then maybe we can combine some things and get some really great learnings out of it. So again, I want to thank all of our panel guests. I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. Hopefully you got something out of it. Once again, until next time, this is the Agile Uprising Podcast signing out. Wash your hands.
Got started in children's, like a swimming full of AIDS all over.